I have been making a Night into Dreams fan game for a while now. My last video showed how I went about making the paraloop system, and now it's time for the next update. This video is going to explain how I attempted to make a level system similar to the kind seen in the original games. In Nights into Dreams, the player is bound to a 2.5D path that will go around the dream world. To make this 2.5D path, I am using the Bezier Path Creator tool, and I will leave a link to it in the description. To start making a path, you will go over to the prefab and drag it into your scene. Alternatively, you could create a game object and attach the Path Creator component, but it bugs out my version, so I haven't been using that. So, when you have a path placed, you're going to see a few things. There's these red dots. These are the points. You can move them around. That is where the Bezier curve will go through. There's the blue dots, which will adjust how the line goes through that point. There's the green line, which is the actual curve, the path. And then there's the yellow lines poking above it, which are the normals, or where the up is on the path. When you're sculpting your path, I recommend going to top orthographic view and switching it to top-down XZ. And then you have to turn it off of closed path. You then shift click to add a line, and you can add a point on a line by subdividing and by holding shift and clicking down on it. You can also delete a point by holding control and then clicking on the point. If you're using an Ideopalis or Ideopalis-like mechanic, you're going to want the first point to be placed right there at where the Ideopalis would be, because that is where the path is going to reset. That is where distance is 0. After that, you can build your points on top of that, and for this I'm just going to make a simple square path, or rectangle. I certainly recommend saving your path by creating a preset pretty regularly, because if you accidentally make a mistake, Control Z will likely break the path. Although right now, very thankfully, it's not. But still, be very cautious in case you make a mistake. Alright, so once you have your path sculpted out, you're probably going to want to switch it back to 3D. This is so that you can have adjustments on each individual point, up and down. Although that's not super crucial. You'll notice that the lines are slightly curved inward. That's because by default, the global angle is set to 69 degrees. You'll want to set that to 90 if you want it pointing straight up. If you just need the path, you really don't have to worry about these normals. But if you're going to use the same method that I use for this path, then the normals and the height is slightly useful for the camera, but not for the actual gameplay. Apart from that, I'm going to drag in an Ideopalis model that I've been working on, and adjust it to be nice, and also drag in, or create, a cube to use as the player. This is a small path, I just realized. Alright, this will be our player. So, to get our player to work, we're going to want to create a script. Alright, once we create the script, we can drag it onto the object, and we can get writing. The first thing we're going to do is use path creation. This will allow us to access the path creator script and get the distance. Next thing is we're going to copy and paste this whole bunch of code, because it's probably useful. It will update the path and do stuff. As said, it's from the example project. Some of it can probably be neglected, but I'd rather not have to figure that out. The real first thing you're going to do, though, is you're going to create a variable called the path creator, and I'm calling it the current path. That is basically just this component. And so that will allow us to get the distance along the track, and we'll also want to create a float and call it distance traveled. just so that we can use the same naming as what has already been used. This will store how far along the path we've traveled. Once it has been updated, then we can drag the path into this path creator spot and, well, do nothing of value yet. We still have more things to write. To put the player on the track, we're going to need a couple more things. First of all, a vector3, and I'm going to call it path position. This is going to store the actual position of the player on the path. And an end of path instruction. This will be able to tell the game, or tell the path, what to do once the distance has exceeded the maximum distance of the track. Whether it's loop, repeat, or loop and repeat are the same thing. There's a few, I'll show it once we get into it. Anyways, after we've got those new variables, we will open up an update and set the path position equal to current path dot get point at distance, and then we're going to input our distance traveled, comma, end of path instruction, and then simply set our position equal to that path position. Once we've saved and imported those changes, we will see we have a new end of path instruction drop down, so we can loop, reverse, or stop, and I will show each of them once we get to that. But loop is going to be the one that you're probably going to use the most. If we press play, we should see, if I switch back to game, or to scene, the cube gets dropped right inside of the path, so we can lower the idiot palace a bit, or pull the path up. And right now that is moving the player, because it's getting the point of that path. And so, as I increase the distance traveled, it will increase, or move along the track. It will not turn around the bends, because it is only getting the distance. And once I get it to the end, you'll see here, it cuts off, because currently I set it to not be a closed path. And so what will happen, it's on loop, it will jump from one to the other. If I set it back to closed path, then it will travel the rest of the distance and then continue going. If I set the end of path instruction to reverse, then if it increased, then it would start going backwards. This will be interesting, but it would also reverse the controls, so it probably wouldn't be ideal if I brought it back a little bit again and then changed it to stop. Then once it exceeds that number, it will simply stop. So now we have the player able to take the position of the path. Let's make it able to be moved by the player. To get the player moving, well, we're going to want a speed variable, and for me, I'm just going to be using the old input system. I would recommend using the new input system, but this works well enough, and it's much quicker to set up. So, after you've got this, then you can get the distance traveled and add to it your horizontal input times your speed, and then times time.delta time, so that everybody moves at the same speed. Then we press save, we go over, press play. You'll see once I increase the speed to something like maybe 10, and then press right in game view, I just have it moved over to the other monitor, the cube will move along the path. Actually, camera's in a good position, so cube will move along the path as I hold right, and then we'll go the other way when I hold left. And we don't have anything set up for up or down movement, but this is pretty cool. Alright, I don't know why, but this path just keeps unclosing or opening. It's really annoying. Oh, it might be with the... no, I don't know. Delete. Yeah, there we go. I don't know why it was doing that. You can probably add some redundancy in making sure it's closed. Anyways, now we're going to make the player be able to move upwards. So we want vertical input. To do that, we're going to drop that down a few lines and change it, because we do not want the y value of that path. So we're going to put it into a new vector 3 made of the path position dot x for x, transform dot position dot y for y, and path position dot z for z. We can change that to be a different float variable, and we'll call it y position. And y position will equal your transform dot position. And with that, you will just stay at the same spot along instead of following the path's position. We can move that into start so that we don't have to check for that every update. And then instead, we can set the y position equal to basically the same thing as distance traveled. So vertical input times speed times time dot delta time. And so now there's an error, right? Transform.position.y. And so now, when we press play, we will see that we can move left and right. I'm going to lower that down to maybe 5. Left and right. And with W and S, I can move up and down. And that also works with the controller. So I can move in nice circles. Now, I'm going to try to rotate along the path. But to do that, we're going to want to have a way of identifying where the cube is facing. Alright, so now that we can identify which direction the player is facing, if I press play, just right away, if I press play, you'll see that if I move along the track a little bit, I cannot freely move the character, but I can freely rotate it. And that's because it is not bound to the track in rotation. So to do that, we're going to need to add a few more lines. So now we're going to start working on rotation. To do this, we're going to make a new vector 3, and it can be a vector 3, not a quaternion. And I also made these private because we don't need to see them anywhere. Once we have our new path rotation variable, we can set that equal to current path dot get rotation at distance, and then input the same stuff, distance traveled, comma, end of path instructions. But we will then put the dot Euler angles at the end so it can fit into a vector 3. So we get the path rotation, and then we can simply set it equal to transform, or set our transform dot Euler angles equal to that path rotation. Alright, yes. So now we will see that the arrow is pointing in the right direction, and as I go along the path, you see it rotates along the turn, and if I adjust the normals, it will rotate the player just how we need it. And so it goes around the track, and how about that? It turns a bit too fast there, but that's a problem with the handles and stuff. If you wanted to make the complex motions that NiGHTS is able to do, this would actually be it for the player controller, because after examining it, I believe the player's rotation, or NiGHTS' rotation, is controlled entirely by an animation controller, and not by scripting him to look up and down. So that would be it, making him look to be looking forward on the path, but that's it. Although I haven't made something so complex yet, or I haven't recreated that yet, so I have, in fact, what is this going on about? I have made a bit of a complex workaround that's able to get it done in script. But it's not pretty, and it doesn't work super well. So if I head over to the one where I'm actually doing the stuff, I'll just copy it all, and I'll move this out of here, paste that. I think I need a few more variables. Yeah, that was before I learned that you could do stuff using Euler angles and transformed opposition. So yeah, I had to do some roundabout stuff. As I'm saying, it's pretty bad code, but I think it works. I need to rename this to be using horizontal input. I should check for other stuff that's like that. Nope. Alright, I believe this is updated with my new naming of it. No, there's errors. Is that a float? Where is rotate? Can I just paste that in there? What am I doing? I think I'm allowed to get rid of that because it's just doing what I just did. Yeah, honestly, I don't know what I was doing back then, but I think it should work. Alright. Yeah, it does what was going on. As soon as I stop moving, it will look forward again. But yeah, if I set my speed to 0 so we can actually look at the player, I'm gonna get the Idiot Palace out of here. You'll see that it doesn't go all the way to the top, and then it snaps. If I create another cube inside of here, up a little bit so you can see where up is, it snaps left and right like that. But hey, it works kind of well enough. But I recommend doing it your own way. I really don't like how I did it. But I am providing the code if you want to use it. Just deal with the background. Alright, I guess the next thing on the checklist is doing the camera. I'm gonna make that cube again. Yeah, so let's deal with the camera. It's going to be a whole nother script, but it's going to be much simpler. And we're actually going to want to put it inside of a new empty. I'll call it camera, put the main camera inside of that. Set it equal to 0, 0. And that is for the main purpose that we can create an offset. Alright, so this script is going to be very similar to the script that we just wrote. We're going to use path creation, and we aren't going to need speed, but we are going to need a current path, a distance traveled, a end of path, a path position, and a path rotation. Oh, I can't select that. What did I just do? I'm going to get rid of this, and we're going to need this variable. Well, we need to import this script, so a public tutorial level script. And so long as you're using path creation, you should have access to it. You could also use the namespace. I don't feel like it. I'm going to call this the player because it is on the player. Next, we're going to copy and paste the other stuff that I copied and pasted. And we can get rid of this Y position because the Y position will be determined by update. So we're going to open up a new update again, and instead of dealing with getting the position again, we're going to get the distance traveled equal to the player dot distance traveled. And then we can deal with all this again. And then simply set the transform dot position equal to the path position. Amazing. Then for rotation, it's going to be exactly the same, except we swap it out for rotation. Path rotation, get rotation at distance, path, rotation, and then dot Euler angles. And we're going to change this from transform.position to transform.Euler angles. We save that, and I think that's it for the very simple version. No, I messed at something. Is transform a capital T? No? What? Did I spell it wrong? I did. Alright, we clear all the errors again. We drop the script on that. We get the path. I guess you could get that in script as well, but I'm lazy. We get the player. And we press play. And this looks like a mess. It's first person. But yeah, it's the reason why we put the main camera under a camera object, so that we can make an offset using that, move the rotation, there we go. And so then, there we go. We're moving along the path. If I bring the game over here, that's what it looks like. Yeah, it might be wiser to make this a virtual camera using Cinemachine and have like a look at target being the player. But once again, this is a rough solution to explain the concept. There's also the idea of using a Cinemachine track rather than using this Bezier curve to control the camera, so that you can have it speed up during certain sections or slow down and zoom out at others. That's for more dynamic things. And that's not for a tutorial, not yet, not this video. Yeah, I'm trying a new style for this kind of video. Why do I keep scrolling? I didn't script this one. I just had a list of some things to do, and yeah, I have no idea how editing is gonna go. But if you're watching this, I'm already done. Wow. Alright, see ya.